The cicadas fell silent, and the silence was louder than their song. I was bent over a bowl of miso soup when it happened, the sudden drop in sound, as if someone had pressed a hand over the mouth of summer. Just a moment before, their buzzing had poured from the trees in the hills behind Irakami, endless, layered, filling every crack of air. Now it was gone. My chopsticks paused midway to my mouth, the steam curling upward in thin threads that trembled with the stillness. It was August 9th, 1945, and the morning had begun as so many others. The tatami mat beneath me was warm from the sun already leaning into the roof tiles. My mother had laid out breakfast in the simple way she always did. Rice, pickled radish, a thin slice of salted fish. The air smelled of the sea, faintly briny, carried from the harbour by the sluggish breeze. A neighbour called a greeting outside, his sandals whispering against the packed dirt road as he passed. I was a clerk by trade, still young enough that my hands bore no calluses from tools or war, only the stains of ink. My office was near the river, a squat wooden building with wide eaves and dusty windows that rattled when trucks rolled by. There were fewer men now to share the work. Many had gone away with uniforms on their backs and had not come home. Still, the days carried on with their rhythm of ledgers, receipts, the scrape of brush on paper. As I finished my rice, my younger sister came running in, clutching the sleeve of her faded summer kimono. "Listen," she whispered, eyes wide. I tilted my head, and then I heard it. Not the silence, but what came after it. A hum, low at first, far away, like bees hidden deep inside a wall. It was not unfamiliar. Planes had passed over Nagasaki before. Most times the sirens would sing their warning, long and thin, and we would move toward cover with a practiced slowness. But this morning no sirens, only the hum, drawing closer. My mother frowned, wiped her hands on her apron and stepped into the yard. I followed, the light outside sharp enough to sting after the dimness of the room. The street lay quiet. A few neighbours had paused mid-task. A woman holding a basket of laundry, a man adjusting the strap of his sandal, all were staring upward. The sky was a clean, hard blue, almost metallic in its brightness. For a long moment, I saw nothing. Then a glint, small and steady, high above. It moved without haste, cutting across the sky in a line that felt too deliberate, too alone. "American," someone murmured. The word hung in the air, fragile as glass. I thought of Hiroshima, though I had not seen it with my own eyes. Only whispers had reached us. Stories that bent under their own weight, tales of a single weapon that had burned a city to its bones. I had dismissed them as exaggerations, the way people do with news too large to believe. Yet seeing that glint above us, steady and unbothered, the memory of those whispers slid cold into my chest. The cicadas had not returned. Their absence, pressed against my ears, made the hum of the plane louder, more insistent. My sister clutched at my sleeve. I told her it was nothing, that it would pass as others had, but the words tasted false the moment they left me. In the distance, the temple bell tolled once, a low resonant note. It should have been comforting, grounding us in the familiar rhythm of the day. Instead, it sounded like a reminder, a marker, a witness. The plane's path bent slightly, angling closer. Sunlight caught its belly, flashing briefly before it turned again. My breath caught. Something about its motion was different from the others I had seen. It did not hurry. It did not seek to pass. It lingered, as though choosing. The soup still sat on the table behind me, cooling in its bowl. The chopsticks rested where I had left them, balanced neatly, ready to be picked up again. But the morning had shifted, and the simple act of returning to that meal felt impossible. I looked again at the sky. The glint remained, patient, watching. The air pressed closer around us, heavy and expectant. Somewhere far off, a dog barked once, then fell silent. And then the sound deepened, grew fuller, as though the plane had opened its throat. The hum was no longer background. It was inside the bones, inside the ribs. I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. My sister's grip tightened. My mother turned her face toward me, her expression unreadable, her lips pressed thin as paper. Something was coming. The air itself seemed to know. The hum thickened until it seemed stitched into the air itself. an invisible thread running through every beam and wall of Nagasaki. I stood in the yard beside my mother, the sun pressing down on my shoulders, my sister's hand clamped to my sleeve. Neighbours lingered in their doorways, shading their eyes against the hard light. The glint above had grown slightly larger, though still so high it looked fragile, like a toy suspended on a string. And still, the sirens had not sounded. The absence unsettled me more than the hum itself. We had grown used to the ritual. The wail would rise, and with it came a kind of relief. The siren gave us permission to move, to duck into shelters, to let fear take its place beside us. But this morning the silence left us stranded between choices, uncertain whether to trust our instincts or the city's measured voice. The street remained quiet, except for a child's laughter breaking out suddenly from a doorway. He had no understanding of the sound in the sky. His mother pulled him inside quickly, but his giggle lingered in the air for a moment longer, light and careless. I shifted my weight and realized I had been holding my breath. I let it out slowly, as though careful not to disturb the plane. My mother murmured something I didn't catch, her gaze fixed upward. I followed her eyes and saw a second glimpse now, smaller, trailing behind the first. A man near the corner muttered, "It's only reconnaissance." He said it with the practiced certainty of someone who needed to believe it. His hands, however, gripped the edge of his basket too tightly, the wicker creaking in protest. The hum deepened. Shadows on the ground grew sharper, every line of roof tile and eave cut cleanly as though drawn in ink. The light seemed to harden too, bouncing off window panes, turning the narrow stream into a streak of white fire, where it cut through the neighborhood. I remembered Hiroshima again. The stories had reached us only days before, carried by rumor more than fact, a weapon that had erased streets, that had burned skin into patterns, that had silenced voices in an instant. Even as I thought of it, I tried to scold myself. A single weapon could not do what whole fleets had not. Yet the thought clung stubbornly, gnawing at the edges of reason. My sister tugged at me. "Shouldn't we go inside?" she asked, her voice small, carrying the weight of a suggestion she didn't want to make. Inside? The wooden house would not hold against bombs, but inside felt like action, felt like movement away from the gaze of the sky. My mother hesitated, torn, her eyes darting between us and the patch of open blue above. Then, faint but clear, another sound, not from the sky this time, but from the ground. A wagon rattling down the lane, its wooden wheels complaining, a fish seller, unaware or unwilling to stop, calling out his wares in the practiced sing-song that usually drew housewives with their purses of coins. The sound was jarring in its normalcy, brushing against the tension like a mismatched chord. The hum above swelled, pressing the voice of the seller into the background until it broke off entirely. He stopped mid-call, his wagon rolling to a halt. For the first time that morning, I saw movement in the city beyond our street. A handful of men in uniform appeared, gesturing upward, their pace brisk. One of them barked something sharp. I couldn't make out. The presence of uniforms usually steadied me, but this time it only deepened the unease. If they were uneasy, what did that mean for the rest of us? A breeze stirred, faint but welcome. It brought with it the smell of the river, damp and earthy. For a heartbeat, it almost grounded me. A reminder that the city was still here, still solid. But then the wind carried another scent, faint, acrid, metallic. I lifted my head, sniffing, trying to place it. It reminded me of machinery, of engines run too hot, of iron that had been pushed past its limit. The plane passed overhead again, this time more directly. Its shadow skimmed the rooftops, a dark smear that moved too quickly to touch. The hum became a growl. My sister whimpered, and my mother pulled her close. From farther down the street, someone shouted, "Shelters! Now!" The command broke the stillness, and the spell of inaction dissolved. People began to move, not running, not yet, but quickening their pace, hands tugging children, doors slamming as belongings were abandoned where they sat. We turned toward the river, where the nearest shelter had been dug. My sandals slapped the dust, each step feeling too loud, too deliberate. The hum behind us shifted again, angling into a path I didn't want to interpret. I glanced back once and saw it. The first plane banking, its body gleaming, the second trailing close. The light caught on something beneath it, a glimmer that sent a shiver down my spine. My thoughts tumbled. Was this reconnaissance? Was this attack? Was this the moment that turned rumor into reality? The cicadas had still not returned. Their silence pressed into me, into the street, into the faces of those around me. Even the dogs seemed to feel it, tails tucked, ears flat, whining at doors they normally ignored. We reached the edge of the shelter, a narrow trench with rough wooden supports, dug weeks earlier during one of the precautionary drills. It was crude, but it was something. People were already gathering there, crowding into the narrow space, voices hushed, eyes darting skyward. I crouched at the entrance. Torn, something in me resisted going down. The plane's hum filled my head, and I felt rooted, caught between the safety of Earth and the compulsion to witness. My sister tugged again, urging me, but my gaze lingered upward. The glint in the sky had grown larger still, almost deliberate in its approach. A white streak formed briefly behind it, condensation perhaps, or something else. The sun caught it and turned it into a blade of light. My chest tightened, my skin prickled with the certainty of something imminent. My mother's voice reached me, sharp, cutting through the paralysis. "Come inside." I stumbled into the trench, the wooden beams pressing close, the damp earth smell thick. People shifted to make room, their knees brushing mine, their breath quick and shallow. My sister clung to me so tightly I felt her nails through my sleeve. The hum above swelled once more, filling the trench, rattling the supports. Dust sifted down from the beams, tickling my neck. A baby began to cry, the sound thin and terrified, swallowed almost immediately by the growl overhead. Then, silence again. Not true silence, but the absence of that hum, sudden, shocking. My ears strained against it. Wait, the cicadas did not return. Instead, a new sound. Not a hum, not a growl, but a whistle, high, sharp, descending. It threaded through the air like a warning meant for the bones, not the ears. I closed my eyes without meaning to. My hand found the earth beside me, pressed hard into it, grounding myself in its cool solidity. My breath caught halfway, waiting for release. And then, nothing. The whistle stopped short, a pause, unbearable in its weight. My eyes flew open, searching the sky beyond the trench's narrow opening. The glint was still there, but it had changed. Its belly looked heavier, emptier somehow, as though it had given something up. A murmur rose among those crowded in the trench. Someone gasped. Someone else muttered a prayer, words tumbling too quickly to separate. I craned my neck, searching the sky. A white spot had appeared high above, glowing strangely against the blue. It grew brighter, swelling until it was no longer a spot, but a sphere. A sun within the sun. The world seemed to hold its breath with me. The light expanded. My vision blurred, my eyes watering against its intensity. Shadows sharpened impossibly. Every beam, every stone, every blade of grass cutting into the ground with cruel precision. The last sound I remember before it came was the cicadas returning all at once. Shrill, furious, a final chorus that split the silence apart. Then the world turned white. The white light swallowed everything. It was not like dawn, not like fire, not like anything my eyes had known before. It had no warmth, no depth, only a searing flatness that stripped the world of shape. For a moment, I thought I had gone blind, not because of darkness, but because of too much sight. Every line, every shadow, every hair on my arm stood in razor relief, then dissolved in the brilliance. I tried to cry out, but the sound died in my throat. My body reacted before my mind did, throwing itself low against the earth. My sister's small form pulled with me, my mother's hand pressing down on the back of my neck. Even with my eyes clenched shut, the light pressed through, painting the inside of my lids in furious red. Then came the heat. It arrived like a wall, no, like a furnace door torn open into the street. The air itself thickened, blistering, crawling over skin. My arms burned, though no flame touched them. My mouth dried instantly, tongue sticking to the roof as though the breath had been sucked out. I heard people screaming. Not one scream, but 100, all breaking at once. Their voices ragged, pulled from them like cloth from a wound. The earth trembled, a deep vibration that shivered through my bones. Dust cascaded from the beams above, choking, bitter. And then came the wind. It tore through the trench with the strength of a giant's hand, yanking hair, ripping at clothes. I felt my sister pulled from my grasp for half a heartbeat before I clamped down harder. Refusing to let go, the wind roared, louder than the plane, louder than the sirens we never heard, louder than anything. It carried with it splinters of wood, shards of tile, and something heavier, beams, furniture, whole walls broken loose. The air became a weapon. I pressed myself into the dirt, the earth shaking with each impact above. Something heavy crashed nearby, the ground quaking, the smell of crushed timber and plaster rushing in. The supports groaned under the strain, bending, splintering. For a moment I thought the trench itself would collapse and bury us alive. When the roar finally receded, the silence that followed felt more violent still. I opened my eyes. Dust clogged the air, turning the light into a muted haze. Shapes moved within it, people staggering, coughing, reaching blindly for one another. My sister clung to me, face buried in my sleeve, shoulders heaving with sobs she couldn't control. My mother's lips moved, but no sound came out, her voice stolen by the blast. I pushed up on trembling arms and looked toward the trench opening. What I saw there froze me where I knelt. The neighborhood, the street where I had eaten miso soup not half an hour before, was gone. Not ruined, not damaged. Gone. Houses had collapsed into smouldering heaps. Roof tiles lay shattered in the road, some still warm enough to glow faintly. Poles that had held lanterns or wires stood snapped, their jagged ends blackened. But it was the light that haunted me most. The city was drenched in it still, not white anymore, but a furious gold that flickered as though the air itself were aflame. My eyes watered, my lungs clawed for air thick with smoke and dust. I pulled my sister to her feet, my mother stumbling after. We stepped out into a world unrecognizable. The ground was littered with things that had no names in this form. Cloth burned to unthreaded black scraps, sandals twisted until they looked like nothing meant for feet. Fragments of bowls, of doors, of memories. A wall leaned precariously, casting a crooked shadow before it surrendered and collapsed in a cloud of dust. From beyond the hill, another sound, deep, resonant, reached us, an echo of the detonation rolling back across mountains and sea, delayed but no less terrible. The echo trembled in my chest, made the rubble shift underfoot, as if reminding us that the blast was not finished with us yet. I turned in slow circles, searching for landmarks. The temple roof was gone, only its foundation stones left, blackened and scattered. The market street where we sometimes bought sweets had vanished beneath a smear of debris. Even the trees that had lined the riverbank were stripped bare, their branches scorched, their trunks leaning away from the center of the blast as if trying to escape. A cry pierced the air nearby. A woman stumbled from the smoke, her arms cradling something. At first I thought it was a bundle of clothes. Then I saw the small hand, limp, dangling. She screamed words I could not make out, her face torn between rage and despair. She stumbled past, eyes blind to us, her voice fading into the haze. The air tasted of metal and ash. Every breath scraped my throat raw, my chest burning with each inhalation. I wiped my mouth with my sleeve and found streaks of black across the white fabric. My hands trembled, not from weakness but from the enormity of it, the way the world had folded in a single breath. And yet, amid the ruin, some things still stood. A gatepost, though its wood was charred black, a section of wall, its plaster cracked, but upright, a single stone lantern near the shrine, leaning as though drunk but refusing to fall. These fragments felt obscene in their survival, mocking in their defiance. We moved slowly through the wreckage, each step uncertain. My mother clutched my sister close, murmuring prayers into her hair. I carried nothing. There was nothing left to carry. My eyes flicked constantly skyward, half expecting another glint, another flash. But the sky above was empty now, blue once one indifferent to the ruin below. As we reached the edge of what had been our street, the scale of the devastation widened. The Urakami district stretched before us, but it was no longer houses and gardens and shops. It was a plain of smoking debris, broken timbers piled like hindling, flames licking at their edges. Black shapes dotted the ground, some moving, some not. A man staggered past, his clothes shredded, skin raw and peeling. He reached for me as though to speak, but no words came, only a rasp, before he fell forward into the dirt. I stepped back instinctively, the image searing itself into my memory. Around us, the voices of survivors rose and fell, cries for mothers, for children, for names shouted into the smoke with no answer. Some voices were hoarse, some were already fading. The air itself seemed to tremble with their sound, as though the city were crying through them. I bent to help a boy, no older than 10, his arm twisted at an angle that made my stomach turn. He clutched a charred toy drum, its skin split, its frame blackened. His eyes were wide but unfocused, and he muttered a name over and over. I guided him toward the shelter, my hands clumsy, my voice hollow as I tried to offer words of comfort that felt false even as I spoke them. The ground beneath us grew hot, as though the earth itself had absorbed the blast fury. My sandals stuck slightly with each step. The dirt turned tacky, unnatural. When I brushed my fingers against a roof tile, it burned me, though no flame touched it. A memory returned, sitting only that morning, chopsticks in hand, the cicadas droning outside. I could see the bowl of soup in my mind, steam rising gently. That world felt as distant now as childhood, unreachable, irretrievable. We pressed on, searching for open space. The narrow lanes of the district were clogged with debris and bodies. In places, the air shimmered with heat, distorting the ruins like a mirage. My sister whimpered, her voice weak, her steps faltering. I hoisted her into my arms despite my exhaustion, her small frame light as ash. When we reached the river, I stopped short. The water that had once carried coolness and life now burned with fire. Oil and debris floated on its surface, flames skipping across it in greedy tongues. People waded in, despite it, desperate for relief from burns, only to emerge screaming as the fire clung to them. Others simply collapsed in its shallows, the water claiming them silently. I turned my sister's face away, holding her close, my own stomach twisting. My mother wept quietly beside me, the sound raw, stripped of pretense. The sky above remained impossibly calm. Clouds drifted at the edges, lazy and unaware. The contrast was unbearable. I wanted to shout at the sky, to demand it, acknowledge what it had allowed, but my throat was too raw, my chest too tight. Instead, I kept walking, one foot, then the other, each step carrying me deeper into a city that no longer existed. Around me, others did the same. Some with purpose, others like sleepwalkers, their faces masks of shock. We were phantoms wandering through a graveyard that had been our home. Somewhere to the south, a church had stood, its dome a familiar landmark. Now it was split in half. One side collapsed, the other jutting into the sky like a broken tooth. Its bells lay in the rubble, twisted, their voices silenced. The air grew darker as more fires caught, the smoke thickening, until the sun became a pale smear. Ash drifted down like snow, clinging to hair, to skin, to the wounds of the living. I brushed it from my sister's face gently, but it returned immediately, unstoppable. I wanted to ask where we would go, what we would do, but the questions felt absurd in a place where even the air could not be trusted to stay still. The only thing left was movement. Not escape, not hope, only the stubborn rhythm of feet, refusing to stop. As dusk approached, the ruins shifted colour, from gold to grey to the deep bruised tones of evening. The fires still glowed, painting the horizon in angry red. The cries of survivors grew fewer, more scattered, as exhaustion claimed even the ability to call out. I carried my sister until my arms failed, then set her down gently, guiding her forward with what strength remained. My mother stumbled beside me, her face streaked with soot and sweat, her eyes hollow but determined. We walked on into a night that felt endless. a night that carried the weight of a sun that had already burned us once. The night did not bring relief, it brought fire. The sky above Nagasaki glowed as though the sun had forgotten to set. Columns of flame rose from the ruins, painting the smoke in furious shades of red and orange. The light shifted and swayed, alive, restless. Shadows danced on broken walls, stretching long, twisting in grotesque shapes, as if the city itself was trying to remember the bodies that had once filled it. The air was unbearable, thick with smoke, hot as breath from an open furnace. Each inhalation scraped my lungs, leaving behind the bitter sting of ash and chemicals I could not name. My lips cracked, my tongue swollen, my throat raw. My sister whimpered against my side, her small body shivering, though the heat around us could have boiled water. Everywhere there was movement, but it was not life as I had known it. Figures stumbled through the haze, their silhouettes warped by flame and smoke. Some were half naked, their clothes stripped away by the blast. Others clutched at their bodies where skin hung in loose folds, peeled by the heat. Their voices rose and fell in broken cries, words lost, replaced by animal sounds of pain and confusion. I saw one man leaning against the stump of a wall, his head tilted unnaturally. He was motionless until the firelight flickered and revealed the truth. He was not resting. His shadow was burned into the plaster behind him, darker than the night itself, the outline of his final stance captured in silence. I tore my gaze away, bile rising in my throat. We picked our way forward. My feet slipped on rubble, on shards of glass, on fragments of roof tile, still warm. My mother kept one arm around my sister while her other hand groped the air, as though touch could replace sight in the smoke. Her face was streaked black, her eyes red and watering, yet she pressed on, step after step, her body moving as if pulled by some unseen thread. The ground trembled occasionally, aftershocks of the blast rumbling through the soil, loosening stones, toppling weakened walls. Each tremor sent fresh dust cascading, choking the air further. Sparks drifted down from overhead, landing on hair, on cloth, on skin, burning tiny holes that stung more than they harmed. Still, each one made us flinch. We passed the river again, this time from a different angle. Its surface boiled with flame, slick with oil. People waded in anyway, desperate for water. Their screams rose as the fire clung to them, a horror that seemed impossible, but unfolded plainly before my eyes. Others collapsed at the edges, their bodies steaming as the heat from the water rose into the night. I carried my sister when I could, but exhaustion gnawed at my limbs. My arms shook, my back ached, my knees buckled. She was so light, yet felt heavier with each step. At times she walked herself, her hand in mine, stumbling but determined. My mother's voice wavered as she whispered prayers into the chaos, her words fragments of sutras, familiar sounds twisted by grief. The world narrowed to fragments, a woman pulling at rubble with bare hands, screaming a name I did not know. A boy with burns so deep he looked painted in charcoal, clutching a wooden sword that had once been a toy, a dog limping on 3 legs, its fur singed, its eyes wild with terror. At one point, we reached an open square. It had once been a marketplace, I realized dimly, though now it was a wide basin of rubble and ash. Fires smoldered at the edges. Survivors gathered there. Many collapsed on the ground, their faces turned upward in disbelief, their bodies trembling. The square was filled with groans, with coughing, with whispers too soft to carry. I lowered my sister gently among them for a moment, letting her rest, her head on my lap. Looking upward, I saw the stars faintly through the smoke. Their distance felt cruel. They looked the same as they had the night before, as though the heavens had no memory of what had been done beneath them. Then, from the far side of the square, a sudden collapse. A building, weakened by fire, gave way with a deep roar, sending a wave of sparks and flame rushing outward. People scrambled to their feet, some too slowly. A burning beam crashed across the square, scattering survivors, the smell of charred wood and flesh rising immediately. I pulled my sister up and staggered away, the heat biting at my back. We kept moving. The city had become a labyrinth of ruin, each turn leading to more devastation. I recognized nothing. Streets I had walked every day were buried under piles of timber and brick. Landmarks were gone, swallowed by fire. I felt unmoored, as though walking through a dream I could not wake from. At one point, I stumbled into what had been a garden. The earth was scorched, the trees reduced to blackened stumps, and yet in the center, a stone basin still held a shallow pool of water, miraculously unboiled. Survivors knelt around it, cupping their hands, their faces desperate. I bent too, scooping water into my parched mouth. It tasted of ash, of stone, of something metallic, but I drank until my stomach clenched. I let my sister drink as well, though I knew the water was tainted. Survival has no purity. As the hours crawled on, the fires seemed to grow even brighter, their glow pulsing in rhythm with the night. My sense of time dissolved. Minutes stretched into eternities. Each breath felt like a victory stolen from the smoke. Each step was an act of rebellion against despair. We encountered others moving in the same direction, forming a loose, silent procession. No one spoke beyond the occasional cry of pain. We shuffled together like shadows, drawn by instinct to higher ground, to anywhere the flames did not reach. Along the way, we passed a shrine. Its Toria gate still stood, though blackened, its paint peeled away. Beneath it, offerings lay scattered and burned. A statue of Cannon, the goddess of mercy, had toppled, its face cracked in half. Yet even broken, it seemed to watch us, its single eye calm amid the ruin. Someone knelt there briefly, bowing before moving on. I bowed too, my motion automatic, my heart hollow. At last we reached a hillside. The climb was brutal, our legs weak, the ground slippery with ash, but we pressed upward, driven by the promise of air less choked, of a vantage from which to understand the scope of what had happened. When we reached the crest, I turned back and saw Nagasaki spread below. The city was gone. Where once had been streets and homes and temples, there was now only a vast, smouldering scar. Fires burned in clusters, sending columns of smoke into the sky. The river glowed faintly with flame. The dome of the Urakami Cathedral was shattered, its ruin gleaming in the firelight. The harbour lay quiet, its ships stilled, the water reflecting the burning shore. I felt my knees weaken, my chest tighten. The sight was too large for my mind to hold. This was not damage. This was erasure. My mother collapsed onto the ground, her hands over her face, her body shaking with silent sobs. My sister leaned against me, too exhausted even to cry, her small hand gripping mine with surprising strength. Behind us, more survivors crested the hill, their faces lit by the fire below. They sank into the grass, gasping, coughing, staring in silence. Some pointed mutely at the ruins. Others simply stared, their eyes empty. The night deepened. The fires below roared on, defiant. The stars wheeled above, indifferent. The earth cooled slightly beneath us, though the heat still radiated from the valley. I sat with my sister in my lap, my arm around her, and tried to remember the morning, the taste of miso soup, the sound of cicadas, the shape of the street outside our home. These memories felt fragile, like paper already singed at the edges, ready to crumble into ash. Yet I clung to them, because they were all that proved the world had existed before the light. Dawn came slowly, though I hardly recognized it. The sky lightened from black to bruised grey, but the fires still glowed, defying the sun. Smoke spread thick and wide, veiling the horizon, clinging to the hills like a shroud. It smelled of everything: broken timber, oil, flesh, a smell so dense it seemed to seep into the skin itself, an odour no washing would ever remove. From the hillside, I watched Nagasaki stir in ruin. Figures rose from the earth as if pulled out of the ash itself. Survivors moved like phantoms, wandering without aim, their outlines softened by smoke. Some searched, calling names in voices too hoarse to carry. Others sat unmoving, eyes fixed on what no longer existed. Beside me, my sister stirred, her breath shallow against my chest. Her eyes blinked open, glazed with exhaustion. She looked down at the valley, confusion swimming across her small face. She didn't ask questions, she only pressed closer, as though afraid that if she let go, I too would vanish into smoke. My mother sat on the ground nearby, her head bowed, lips moving in a prayer that had no ending. The light revealed details that the night had hidden. Entire neighborhoods were flattened, roofs and walls pulverized into indistinguishable heaps. Blackened outlines of bodies lay twisted where they had fallen, some still clutching objects they had tried to carry. A bicycle leaned against a pile of rubble, its tires melted into warped black rings. An iron kettle lay half buried in the dust, its handle twisted into a grotesque curl. From the river, a faint hiss echoed as flames still licked at the oily surface. The water reflected not the sky, but the fire. A false sunrise. Survivors staggered toward it, kneeling at the banks, scooping handfuls of the foul liquid to soothe their burns. Some did not rise again, their bodies folding quietly into the mud. We descended the hill in silence, drawn toward the city not by choice but by the weight of belonging. This had been our home, our streets, our shops, our temple bells. Even destroyed, it pulled us back. Each step down the slope sent a puff of ash into the air, clinging to our clothes, our skin, our hair, until we too felt like part of the ruins. At the foot of the hill, the devastation was closer, harsher. I picked through splintered beams and twisted tiles, guiding my sister by the hand, my mother following behind. Survivors moved past us, their eyes empty, their feet dragging. One man carried a charred futon across his shoulders, as though the act of carrying something from the old world gave him purpose. Another led a cow whose hide was mottled with burns, its eyes rolling wildly. A group gathered around what had once been a well. The wooden frame above it was gone, collapsed into charred fragments. Yet people knelt there, lowering buckets tied with scraps of rope, desperate for water. The water they drew up was cloudy, tinged with ash, but they drank it greedily. I knelt too, pulling up a half-filled bucket, lifting it to my sister's lips. She sipped, grimaced, but swallowed. My own throat ached with thirst, so I drank as well. It tasted bitter, metallic, but it slid down my throat like relief. A boy beside me coughed violently after drinking. His lips bled. His mother patted his back, whispering reassurances she did not believe. I looked away. We moved on, deeper into the ruins. Each street was a graveyard of familiar things made strange. A sandal without its pair, a door leaning against nothing, a clock face shattered but still faintly ticking, though its hands were frozen at 11:02. I stared at it for a long moment, understanding then that the city had been marked by that instant sealed into it forever. At one crossing, I found the remains of a tram. Its frame lay on its side, wheels bent, windows shattered. Inside, a handful of figures sat as though still passengers, their bodies blackened, frozen mid-journey. I turned my sister away quickly, but the image rooted itself in my mind. They had been waiting to arrive somewhere. Instead, they had arrived here. We passed the ruins of the Orakami Cathedral. Its dome had collapsed, burying the nave in stone. Statues of saints lay decapitated among the rubble. Yet one crucifix still stood, charred but upright, its figure darkened but visible. Survivors knelt before it, their prayers rising in murmurs. The sight both comforted and unsettled me, a remnant of faith in a place that had been stripped of reason. The day grew hotter as the sun rose, though its warmth was swallowed by the heat still radiating from the ground. The ruins steamed in places, as if the earth itself had not yet cooled. My skin prickled, sweat mixing with soot. Flies began to gather, buzzing around wounds, around the still forms that dotted the streets. Their sound was faint at first, then louder, insistent, an accompaniment to the silence of those who would never move again. I searched for faces I knew, neighbors, friends from school, the shopkeepers whose voices had filled the market. Some I recognized among the wandering, their eyes meeting mine, their lips trembling in unspoken disbelief. Others I found only in absence, collapsed houses where they had lived, silence where their laughter had once carried. By noon, exhaustion overtook us. We sat in the shade of a half-standing wall, our bodies slumped, our stomachs hollow. My sister dozed fitfully against my side. My mother's eyes stared into the distance, unblinking. I pulled from the rubble a piece of cloth singed but intact enough to wrap around my sister's shoulders. It smelled of smoke, but it was something to shield her from the harsh air. Around us, survivors whispered. Some spoke of Hiroshima again, now with certainty rather than rumor. They said this was the same weapon, the same terrible fire that had swallowed that city. Others argued in disbelief. No single bomb can do this. One insisted, yet the proof lay around us in every direction. As afternoon bent toward evening, the cicadas returned. Their song rose weakly at first, then louder, as though nothing had changed. The sound scraped against my nerves. How could they sing in this place, over this silence, over this ash? Yet their persistence carried a strange comfort too, proof that life, however small, had survived. I rose and wandered briefly away from my mother and sister, needing distance, needing breath. My steps took me to what had been our street. I found the place where our house had stood. Nothing remained but a patch of scorched earth, fragments of walls scattered like bones. The bowl of soup I had left unfinished that morning was gone, vaporized into memory. I crouched there, touching the ground, and felt warmth still lingering, as though the fire had not yet released its hold. I pressed my palm flat against the earth until the heat burned me. I left it there anyway, as if holding on to the last trace of the life we had known. When I finally pulled my hand back, the skin was reddened, tender. I cradled it against my chest, a wound and a memory both. Night approached again. The fires still glowed, though many had burned themselves low. The city was cloaked in smoke, the stars above faint and timid. Survivors gathered in small groups, their voices hushed, their movements slow. Some sang softly, broken hymns or lullabies, meant to soothe children. Others sat in silence, their eyes reflecting the flames. I lay beside my sister and mother, the earth hard beneath us. My body ached in every joint, every muscle, but my mind refused rest. I stared into the smoke, my thoughts circling endlessly. I wondered what tomorrow would bring, if there would be food, if the air would ever clear, if those who had vanished into the blast would ever be remembered properly. The cicadas sang on, their chorus steady, indifferent. I closed my eyes and listened, forcing myself to breathe in rhythm with them, letting their sound carry me towards something like sleep. Before I drifted off, one last image fixed itself in my mind. A roof tile, blackened, half buried in ash. I had picked it up earlier, turning it in my hand. It was still warm, its edges sharp. I had set it back down carefully, as though returning it to the earth. That single tile was all that remained of home. I carried its weight in memory as I surrendered to the night.